We know our intermuscular is a 90-degree angle, and a um, subcutaneous is 45, and we know the intradermal is uh, 10 to 15. So we've got all that down. We've got the know-how and everything. Now we're going to start focusing a little bit more on the actual medications, mainly vaccines that you're going to be giving, and how they should be administered, and the um, the do's and the don'ts of that. So today's kind of an important lecture because no matter where you go, you'll be doing, vaccines or boosters or stuff like that. So I want to make sure everybody, you know, most of the things I'll talk and everything. If it's something I really want you to write down that I think is really important, I'll stop and I'll tell you. I'll make sure I note and tell you, hey, this is, write this down. You're going to need to know this. And I know I've posted a couple of videos about vaccines, but there's two more that I'm going to be putting up for, one's from the CDC, and it's the vaccine schedule guideline. And then the other one is, I think it's World Health Organization as well. So they're both, very reliable sources for our information, and they're very informative. I'm going to give you a printout for one of them. If you'd like, you can print that out. It is very handy to have. It's the vaccine schedule, and it tells you when a vaccine is due, the appropriate dose for the age, the needle gauge, everything. So it's a really, really helpful guide, okay? All right, I'm going to start sharing. You're going to have to bear with me today. I am just drained. It's just energy levels. We're going to share this. Why does it pop up like that? This. There we go. All right, and y'all can see that says administering medications. Lesson 3, right? Yes. I know I want to hear somebody tell me, yes, I can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. And the reason I do that is because I have gone whole lectures before and nobody said, hey, Miss Scalp, I couldn't see nothing. So now I make sure. Our objectives, same thing. We're going to talk about the childhood vaccines, the recommendation, that kind of thing, like I mentioned. We're going to talk about why we're giving them. We're going to talk a little bit or refresh ourselves about immunity and who's more likely to be at risk. And then we already know a lot about antibodies because, we talked about the immune system, right? And we talked about where is that, or am I getting my other class confused? Have y'all gone over the immune system and blood formation?
Yeah, we went over
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I can't remember. Between the three, I got 3 classes now, and it's hard for me to remember who's doing what. But yeah, we'll refresh over that, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to start off. We know that the whole reason, right? The whole reason that we give an immunization is to protect, right? Because there are diseases out there that we don't want people getting. We don't want a pandemic. And we see now with having a pandemic how easily it spreads and how fast it can go. And things like measles, we used to have that measles outbreaks to where that it, it would spread, and it spread across, an entire area. And uh, back in before modern technology and medication, a lot of children didn't survive that. Same thing with the mumps, um, and then diphtheria. So these vaccines they're vital, right? So when you write a note and you think about immunizations, you know we give immunizations to a patient to help their body to build up forces against that that pathogen. Does that make sense? We want, and we already know how they do that. They do that by the B cells, right? The B cells memorize and write things down, and they are our historians for our body. They are what keep floating around the blood. And if chickenpox or varicella decides to creep back in, the body automatically is like, oh no, we already know your game, jumps right on it, bam, takes care of it, right? So this is why we give immunizations to keep people healthy. And there's a lot of people out there with lots of different ideas and views and thoughts as far as are vaccines safe, and are vaccines this, that. I went through a, a lot of research. I know when Andrew Wakefield was a man, he was a doctor, and he wrote a paper in the early 2000s, and it said that vaccines were bad, and that they were poisoning our children and this and that. And it was because we start off, let's get the facts straight. Come to find out, his whole paper was discredited, and the the only bit of truth in uh, his paper was that about this additive called thermosol. And thermosol is a preservative. It's to keep the immunization itself from becoming contaminated and lasting longer. The problem with thermosol is that, yes, it did cause bad reactions in children. Not all of them, but in some. So but let's see, 16, 17 years ago, the FDA found out, that, hey, we see thermosols doing this, we see that it's causing that, and they took it out. And now you won't find it in pediatric immunizations. They're still use thermosol for seniors and people who are older people, because it doesn't have the same effect. Their body's already neurologically developed different things. It doesn't have the same consequences for it. So just, if somebody tells you vaccines aren't safe, vaccines are safe. Vaccines save lives. And the additive that was harmful is not in our vaccines anymore. You'll have people tell you, oh, there's this or that or mercury or blah, blah, blah. And yes, there are additives in them, but they are micro doses. They are tiny things. And there are, like I said, the whole anti-vax movement has taken our progress and just completely set it back in some areas, just horribly. So it's been a very big disservice. My sister-in-law, being a pediatrician, she her group that she works for, they won't even see parents that that refuse vaccines. Now, if the child has an issue, like believe it or not, Brian, my child, has an issue. He had a anaphylactic reaction to him. So, of course, if it's a medical related contraindication, then they're, of course, they'd still see them. But it's just those moms that are just like, no, you know. So we start off by saying that. So please make sure that, and if you are, you know, somebody that has heard that information, you just got to dig deeper. You got to look and find out the overall statistics of how vaccines save lives. Okay, um, when we have our already like a pre-existing um, issue, like with a health issue or something like that, we know that that makes us susceptible. We know that that puts us more at risk. These patients can be any age, and kids included. They're one of the ones that we really want to focus on and make sure that they stay vaccinated and make sure that they're on their vaccine track, right? Because we want their bodies to continue to produce antibodies. And in case anybody needs a refresher, what are our antibodies? This is when you, and they can be acquired different ways. But let's think of the most common way. The most common way is you're exposed to something, and then you your body goes, oh, well, we ain't letting that happen again. So your B cells make little notes, and they're like I said, they're the history keepers, and they run around and they make sure that if that pathogen enters again, that it can't do harm. Now, vaccines work, okay? They work because we're giving, and a lot of the videos that I've already talked about have explained this, but they're giving you either a beaten up copy of that pathogen, or they're giving you a part of its DNA type strand, or they're giving you a dead version of it. So, because all we need is a minute amount of whatever pathogen for our body to go, whoa, and make a little history, a note, and for our B cells to always remember, okay? We know that antibodies are always floating around. They're always in a defensive stance. They're looking, you know, they're floating around in our body, and they activate our alert and our immune response if something is foreign, or if something is not something they recognize that they feel. Sorry, my cat's having a cat moment. When they realize that they haven't seen this before, so then they'll call in the other white blood cells and say, hey, we're probably going to need a little help getting rid of this one. This is new. Okay. Yeah. Once you've been exposed to something, you usually don't get that exact same illness again. And you're like, well, Miss Scoff, I get a cold every year. Well, the problem is colds are not, what do you call? They're not individual. There are thousands of different strains of the cold virus. So just because you got one doesn't mean that you're immune to all other, 999 whatever that there are. We usually will need our body to recover completely from the illness before we have a set immunity to that. And what that means is some people will be like, well, I had chickenpox twice. Well, you might not have had chickenpox twice. What might have happened is that your body was still trying to, get everything in order and, do the memory as far as keeping that information. So it's not that you actually had it twice. It's just it hadn't gone to the area, the stage of where it could remember it. We talked about we artificial. We talked about passive. We talked about how, yeah, uh, they give the vaccines that are either inactive, and these are the medical terms. If you want, and I advise writing this down. Inactive is when they give a vaccine that's dead. Okay, and then when it's been beaten up and weakened, we call that attenuated. And then there is a new, like I said, there is a new way that they're doing it as well, where they actually just throw a strand of its DNA. Okay, so there's active, which is dead, and attenuated, which is weakened or beaten up. Um, each year, the Center for Disease Control, and I know I've already explained this, talks about how um, they get facts all year long in test results from people who come in with the flu, and they use all of that material to see what strain of flu that the majority of people have been sick with. And that's how they make the flu vaccine. That's why it's important that you get a flu vaccine every year. It's not something you get and, oh, I'm good. It should be done every year. And I'm going to take a second and let y'all know, with COVID going around, if you are going to be out, you're going to be working and in the workforce and not completely isolated in your home, you need to get a flu vaccine. They're already starting to give them. I recommend getting it now than later. Okay, it might make you, give you a day or two where you're not feeling so hot, but it's a lot better for your body to go ahead and grab that and take care of it. Another thing that a lot of people are informed about is that the flu vaccine is only one strain of the flu. It's actually, yeah, they take the most common, but it's actually got several other minor strains too. So it kind of is an overall protection for you. And kind of once it's day or two and it's made its antibodies and it's protected you, you're bubbled, you're safe, and you should. Now, is there a chance that you could possibly still get the flu? And I know y'all have heard me say this. Yes, because it's just possible. The flu's a different type of being, and my son always gets on to me. He's like, viruses aren't alive, Mom. But I always think of them as like, because they're smart. They're so adaptive. To me, it's hard for me not to see them as alive. Um, but what ends up happening is even though you've had the flu vaccine, you can still catch the flu. But what that vaccine does for you is it has the antibody memory there. And so when you do get it, your symptoms are going to be a lot less severe and a lot shorter than what they would have been if you hadn't had the immunization. The reason I'm talking and I'm telling all of y'all this is stuff you're going to have to relate and reassure and inform your patients. So that's vital that you understand how the flu shot works. And so that's one of the most common ones that you're going to be administering, so that when your patient does come in, and I don't know about getting the flu, I heard somebody got the flu, and you can be able to set them straight with facts and the information and assist the doctor in, because that's our goal. We want to try to ease the burden that the doctor's, having to deal with. Immunizations, we start children age 6 months up to their 19th birthday. You're like, wait a second, I have babies that go in earlier. We'll talk about that. Pregnant women, women 50 years, are people 50 years of age or older, people with any chronic medical condition, and anyone living in a facility. These are all of the people, all right, that when we think of the flu vaccine, that they should be getting uh, the flu vaccine, all right? These people are more prone or more susceptible. Kids, because they're in daycare and school. Pregnant women, they've got a baby on board. Once 50, your body begins to not maybe function as at 100%. And then anybody who has an underlying medical condition, and then of course, once again, nursing home and facilities are a lot like schools. They're exposed to everybody and everyone's germs. If a person that you live with is at high risk, you should get yourself vaccinated. People who are in the healthcare field always should be vaccinated. Most companies will make you. You don't have a choice. And then, but the problem is when you do have the babies, children that are less than 6 months, they're too young to get the flu vaccine, okay? But anybody 6 months and older, all right, you need to know that. That needs to be something you write down. 6 months and older can benefit and have the flu vaccine each year, okay? Childhood and adolescent immunizations. This is now, most of this is kept in a database. And so no matter where you go in the United States, they're able to type in your kid's information, pull it up, and find out that, oh, okay, Bobby's had this, this, and this, but he's still missing these three. And why that's so amazing is because in the old times, we had paper card immunizations, and things happen. Fires happen, floods happen, moves happen, they get lost. And when that happened, a lot of times, the kids had to go back and repeat vaccinations and that kind of stuff. And we don't want that. So that data bank that we have now is amazing. And if you go work for a pediatric office, that's something that you'll have to be trained in, and it's how to access that, and it's easy, and how to search up and look for that, and how to enter in information for that, okay? Schedules is very important that they're maintained and they're kept. There's always the recommended age, and they're going to have a recommended cycle for that specific vaccine that the child's going in for. You try not to give them too early or try not to give them too late, because we need that they space them out for the best results. That's why that they're given in the orders that they're given. The CDC, or the Center for Disease Control, has provided, and I'm going to provide this with you, the vaccine information sheet. And it basically looks very similar, the one I'm going to give you, to this. But ours is it's a little more in depth, because not only does it tell you when and the age and so forth, mine will tell you what dose that they get and what needle size you should use and where it should be administered and stuff, okay? I'm so sorry. All right, the first one we're going to get into is diphtheria. So you need to write diphtheria down, and you need to know that diphtheria is acute, means it comes on sudden, and it is spread by direct and indirect. All right, it's diagnosed through a throat culture, and the symptoms are bad. The symptoms, you don't want to see a baby with a headache. You're not going to know they have a headache. All they're going to do is be screaming and yelling and crying. They're going to have a fever and sore throat. Now, is diphtheria treatable? Yes, but the problem is, unless you immediately catch it and you immediately find out, okay, this is what it is, it can be very serious. It can even be deadly. Vaccines are given to children in 5 separate doses for diphtheria, okay? They spread that out over 5 doses instead of one massive dose. And the 5th dose is given between 4 and 6 years old. Okay, so that last dose, and then we can say our child's fully vaccinated against diphtheria. The good news is, once they have 1 or 2 vaccines, they're usually got enough antibodies to fight it off. Pertussis, and we call that whooping cough. You need to know that, because a lot of parents aren't going to come in and say pertussis. They're going to call it whooping cough. And I've talked to y'all about that before and told you how, I think I even played the video for you with the baby, and how the baby was just coughing, just nonstop cough, and then just to catch a breath that it had to and gasp just to try to get in enough air. And this is a horrible, horrible disease to watch a baby suffer with. It's very common with the little bitty ones under 4. And the violent coughing and can lead to lack of oxygen, can lead to hypoxia, can lead to a lot of medical issues. So most of the time these children are hospitalized, they're in intensive care, they're sometimes on oxygen, some of them are even placed on assisted ventilation because their body's just not getting enough of the oxygen that it needs due to this persistent, constant cough. The pertussis vaccine, because it is a bacteria. Now, if somebody was to get it, there is treatment as far as antibiotics. But the only issue is these antibiotics are effective, but they're hard and they're strong. They tax a small child's body, and that's it. Body's already being taxed from the pertussis to begin with, and the constant coughing and the constant respiratory issues that goes along with pertussis. So we want to make sure that the children are given their pertussis and that they are on track with the pertussis immunization. Once a child is immunized, they are no longer susceptible to contracting pertussis, which is good. That's a guarantee for you there. Hey, your kid gets a pertussis vaccine. There you go. You're good to go. You're not going to have to worry about them ending up with catching pertussis. I'm going to do tetanus and stop here. Tetanus, you always heard your grandmother or your mom or whatever tell you, put your shoes on. You don't want to step on a rusty nail, or don't touch that. That's, could have rust on it or something like that. And a lot of times why everybody's always so crazy about rust, because rust was the perfect environment for tetanus to kind of breed in, also in certain ground soils and stuff like that. It is caused by a bacteria, so that means that antibiotics could treat it. But here's the problem with tetanus is when a adolescent or a child baby gets tetanus, they spike a very high fever. They have blood pressure issues. Do we see too many babies running around with blood pressure? No. And then here's the real kicker. It tends to distort and contract the muscles and cause severe muscle spasms to the point of where they possibly are even frozen in a position. And I've seen people with tetanus who, they call it lockjaw because they're not able to open or close or move their mouth to eat. Tetanus is done in the combo vac. It's called a DTaP vaccine. Okay, and this means DTaP is something you need to write down and know that it is an acronym for the diphtheria and tetanus and pertussis all in one. It's the DTaP. 5 DTaPs are needed, all right, for your child to be completely vaccinated for and against diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. All right, and then we do give a booster somewhere between 4 and 6 years old, just to make sure, just to be 100% certain that the body's making those antibodies. All right, it's not going to allow diphtheria or tetanus or pertussis to enter into our child. Okay, the DTaP, the TD vaccine does not contain pertussis. So there is one that they might just come in and say, hey, I need just the TD. And then, so you might see this vaccine as a standalone. When we do that, it's usually given to children who are 7 years or older and who have missed or for whatever reason delayed on their immunization schedules. The DTaP vaccine, when you see it as DT, that is just the vaccine that contains diphtheria and tetanus, but no pertussis. Okay. And then DT is only given to children under the age of 7. It's not recommended for children over the age of 7 because they should have already had that. This is that protection that they need to be safe and to be guarded against getting diphtheria or tetanus. All right, I'm going to stop here because the next one is influenza, and I don't want to go back into that. Anybody have any questions? Nope. Y'all know what day is the last day of your mod? Thursday. So if you're missing work, if you have anything that still needs to be turned into you, anything that I've returned back to you that didn't have a grade, do it, send it in. Something's better than nothing. You cannot afford to miss a Survey Monkey this week, okay? Nobody can. So make sure you get all of those in. And I hope y'all had a good weekend, and I will see you tomorrow. Make sure y'all hang up, okay? Bye, guys.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.